I never imagined that my fairy tale wedding would turn into my worst nightmare. Laughter filled the bridal suite as I adjusted my veil for the final time. The golden morning sun bathed the room in warmth, making everything feel surreal. I'm Harper, and today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. "Harper, you look absolutely stunning," Madison, my best friend, exclaimed as she helped me smooth the delicate lace of my dress. The air was electric with excitement, but underneath, an uneasy feeling settled in my chest. Ethan had been distant all morning. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Laughter filled the bridal suite as I adjusted my veil for the final time. The morning sun poured through the windows, casting a warm golden light over everything, making the moment feel surreal. I'm Harper, and today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. "Harper, you look absolutely stunning," Madison, my best friend, squealed, helping me smooth out the delicate lace of my dress. The other bridesmaids nodded, their matching blue dresses creating a beautiful contrast in the mirror behind me. The air was alive with excitement, hairspray, perfume, and champagne blending into the perfect wedding day ambiance. Everything felt like a dream. The venue, a beautiful historic mansion with sprawling gardens, was just as I had always envisioned. "The flowers are here," and Skylar, my sister, announced as she walked in, holding a massive bouquet of white roses and peonies. "And Ethan's already here. He's nervous but so excited." Her words made my heart flutter. After 2 years of dating and a magical engagement, I was finally marrying the man of my dreams. The door opened once more, but this time the atmosphere in the room shifted. Eleanor, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, stood in the doorway in an expensive gray dress, her smile perfectly measured but lacking warmth. "Harper, dear," she said, her voice laced with a sickly sweetness. "We need to talk about the seating arrangement again." The way she emphasized "again" made my stomach tighten. We had already gone over this at least 3 times this week. Madison squeezed my hand in silent support. "Mrs. Walker, we've already finalized everything. The coordinator has it all under control." Eleanor waved a perfectly manicured hand, dismissing Madison's words. "This won't take long. I just think it's inappropriate to have Harper's cousin Chase at the main table given his background." My heart dropped. Chase had battled addiction years ago but had been sober for 5 years now. He was like a brother to me, and hearing Eleanor's words felt like a deliberate jab. "He's family," I said, my voice steady but firm. "And it's already been arranged." Eleanor's face tightened, but before she could retort, my mom burst into the room, her face radiating excitement. "Harper, honey, the photographer's ready for pre-ceremony shots." The tension broke, at least for a moment, as I gathered my dress to leave the suite. But as I passed by Eleanor, I caught her typing furiously on her phone. Something about her expression made my gut twist, but I brushed it aside. This was my wedding day, nothing would spoil it. In the garden, the photographer positioned us among the roses. The bridesmaids laughed, posing as the soft morning light bathed them in a warm glow. Everything looked like a fairy tale. White chairs lined up on the lawn, the flower arch where Ethan and I would exchange our vows, and soft music drifting on the breeze. "Beautiful," the photographer called out, snapping photos. "Now let's get some shots with the groom's mother." Eleanor stepped forward, placing her arm around my waist. Her grip was a bit too tight, her smile just a little too forced. "We're going to be one big happy family now," she whispered, and something in her tone made my skin crawl. I smiled for the camera, ignoring the uneasy knot forming in my stomach. The perfect day I had envisioned was about to take an unexpected turn, and I had no idea how dramatically my life was about to change. "Harper?" Eleanor's voice cut through the chatter again. "Could you come here for a moment? There's something else we need to discuss." She stood near the garden entrance, her face serious. I heard my phone buzz in Madison's purse as I walked toward her. It was a message from Ethan. "Mom's upset about something. Please be patient with her today." If only I knew then what was about to unfold. I might have run in the opposite direction, but instead, I straightened my back, fixed my smile, and walked toward Eleanor, determined to keep the peace on my wedding day. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a story that would change everything. Harper, dear. Eleanor's voice was honey-sweet as she led me away from the cameras and watching eyes. Let's have a proper chat, just us girls. She guided me toward a quiet corner of the garden where rose bushes provided privacy from the rest of the wedding party. I smoothed my dress, trying to stay calm despite the warning bells ringing in my head. Is everything okay, Eleanor? Her smile dropped the moment we were alone. No, Harper. Everything is not okay. Do you think I don't see what you're doing? Her eyes narrowed, scanning my face like she was searching for something. I'm not sure what you mean, I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. Oh, please, she scoffed, adjusting her designer shawl. The way you've arranged this wedding, pushing my suggestions aside, placing your family front and center, even that tasteless cousin of yours at the main table. It's like you're deliberately trying to embarrass us. I felt heat rising to my cheeks. Eleanor, this is Ethan's and my wedding. We made these decisions together. Together? She laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. My son would never choose such common arrangements. This all screams of your family's influence. Those tacky centerpieces, that generic music playlist. Those centerpieces, I interrupted, finally letting some steel enter my voice, were handmade by Ethan's grandmother, your mother. Eleanor's face flushed red. Don't you dare speak to me about my mother. You think because Ethan gave you a ring, you suddenly understand our family? You have no idea about class, about tradition. I noticed some guests starting to look our way. Madison was watching from near the photo area, her concern visible even from this distance. I think we should rejoin the others, I said, trying to diffuse the situation. The ceremony starts in an hour. Don't walk away from me when I'm speaking to you. Eleanor grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in slightly. You may have fooled Ethan with your sweet, innocent act, but I see right through you. You're nothing but a gold digger, using my son to climb the social ladder. The accusation hit me like a slap. That's not true, I whispered, feeling tears threatening to form. I love Ethan. This isn't about money or status. Mom? Ethan's voice cut through the tension. He was walking toward us, looking handsome in his tuxedo but wearing a worried expression. Everything okay here? Eleanor's transformation was instant. Tears welled up in her eyes as she turned to her son. Oh, Ethan, I was just trying to have a heart-to-heart with Harper, to welcome her to the family properly, and her voice broke dramatically. She said the most horrible things about our family, about our traditions. What? I stared at her in disbelief. That's not what happened at all. Ethan looked between us, confusion clear on his face. Harper, what's going on? She called me a controlling witch, Ethan. Eleanor was full-on crying now, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. Said I had no right to be involved in the wedding at all, that our family's traditions were outdated and embarrassing. I never said any of that, I protested, feeling the situation spiral out of control. More guests were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Ethan's expression hardened as he looked at me. Harper, why would you say those things to my mother today of all days? But I didn't. Ethan, she's twisting everything. She's the one who... Are you calling my mother a liar? His voice was cold now, different from anything I'd ever heard from him before. Eleanor pressed her advantage, clutching Ethan's arm. I just wanted to be part of this special day, to share our family's traditions, but she broke into fresh sobs. The watching crowd had grown larger. I could see my parents pushing through, trying to reach us. Madison was already halfway across the garden, her face fierce with concern. Ethan, please. I reached for his hand. You know me. You know I wouldn't... I thought I knew you. He cut me off, his voice hard. But maybe Mom was right about you all along. The tension in the air was suffocating, thick with the weight of Ethan's words. The perfect day I had envisioned was crumbling, and I stood there in my white dress, feeling more isolated than ever. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. The silence stretched on, unbearable and endless. Guests murmured, their whispers sharp in the heavy air, while Eleanor continued to feign distress, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief that seemed far too carefully chosen. "How dare you!" My voice rang out, stronger than I had expected, surprising even myself. "After everything we've built together, you would believe these lies without hearing my side?" Ethan's jaw clenched as he glared at me. "My mother has no reason to lie, Harper," he said, his tone sharp. "But you—" He glanced at my cousin, Chase, standing off to the side, watching us closely. "Your family has a history of causing problems." The words hit like a slap. My hand trembled, but I refused to let them see it. "My family?" I shot back. "My family welcomed you with open arms. They helped plan this wedding, they supported us, and they loved you like their own." Eleanor scoffed, her fake tears vanishing just as quickly as they had appeared. "Is that what you call it? Forcing your way into our lives? Trying to change Ethan, turning him against me?" Madison arrived by my side, standing strong, her eyes fierce. "Mrs. Walker, I think you need to step back and stay out of this." Ethan snapped back at her. "Stay out of it, Madison." He turned his glare back on me, his voice laced with fury. "You know what? Mom warned me about you months ago. She said you and your family would never fit in with us. I should have listened." The room went silent, the sting of his words hanging in the air. I could see my mother's face crumple in pain, and my father's hands balled into fists. But then, Chase stepped forward, his voice calm yet firm. "That's enough, Ethan. Want to talk about family history?" Chase's tone was steady. "Let's talk about how your mother treated your last fiancé, or the one before that." Eleanor's face drained of color, her anger rising quickly. "How dare you bring that up? What, because I used to be a recovering addict?" she spat. Chase smiled grimly. "At least I own my mistakes. At least I changed." Before I could fully process, Ethan moved quickly. With one swift motion, he grabbed my bouquet from my hands and threw it to the ground, stomping on the flowers with a violent force. "This wedding is over!" he yelled, his voice dripping with contempt. "I won't let you and your trashy family embarrass us anymore." The collective gasp from the guests was deafening. Madison's arm went around me, trying to steady me, but I didn't need it. Something inside me snapped, and a cold, hard resolve replaced the shock. "You're right about one thing, Ethan," I said, my voice clear and unwavering in the stunned silence. "This wedding is over, but not because you're calling it off, because I am." I reached up, my fingers trembling slightly as I removed my veil, letting it fall to the ground beside the crushed flowers. I deserve better than a man who'd humiliate me at my wedding, better than a family that breeds such cruelty. "Harper, don't be dramatic," Eleanor started, her voice tight, but I cut her off with a look that made her step back. "I have the receipts for everything my family paid for this wedding," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. "You'll be receiving them tomorrow, along with a bill for my dress, which your son just ruined. I suggest you pay them promptly, unless you want everyone here to know exactly how much you needed our trashy money to make this wedding happen." I stood there, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. It was over, and I was done. Ethan's face flushed red. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." I turned to the gathered guests, my head held high. "I'm sorry you all came out here today. The reception hall is paid for until midnight. Please enjoy the food and drinks. Consider it my parting gift." As I walked away, Madison at my side and Chase following close behind, I heard Eleanor's shrill voice. "Ethan, are you going to let her speak to us this way? Do something!" But I didn't stop to hear what he might do. I'd already given that family enough of my time, my love, and my trust. As I reached the bridal suite to gather my things, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Ethan's cousin, Skylar. "I have videos of everything and there's more you need to know. Meet me tomorrow." I showed the message to Madison, who smiled grimly. Looks like the perfect wedding day might turn into the perfect revenge. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, my ruined dress, my smudged makeup, my straight spine, and my dry eyes, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. The hotel room felt too quiet the morning after what should have been my wedding night. Sunlight crept through the curtains I hadn't bothered to close, and my phone kept buzzing with messages I wasn't ready to read. "You need to eat something," Madison said, setting down a coffee and bagel beside my bed. She'd stayed with me all night, sleeping on the small couch by the window. "And you should see some of these social media posts. People are on your side, Harper." I sat up slowly, my eyes falling on my ruined wedding dress hanging on the closet door. I still can't believe it happened. Any of it. "Harper," Madison hesitated, checking her phone again. "Skylar's downstairs, Ethan's cousin. She says she needs to talk to you. She has information." Before I could respond, my phone started ringing. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. Madison reached to decline it, but I stopped her. "No, I want to hear what he has to say." Taking a deep breath, I answered and put it on speaker. "What do you want, Ethan?" His voice came through shaky, different from yesterday's anger. "Harper, baby, we need to talk. Mom, she told me everything. The truth. I'm so sorry." Madison and I exchanged looks. The truth about what? Mom's been lying, not just yesterday, but about everything. The family business, the inheritance, all of it. He paused, and I heard him take a shuddering breath. "She's been embezzling money for years, using my name. That's why she needed this wedding to happen. Your family's connection to the bank. She needed the merger to cover her tracks, Harper." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she used us. Both of us. And when she realized you were smarter than she thought, that you might figure it out, she had to stop the wedding. Harper, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. Should have trusted you." The door knocked softly. Skylar had come up. Madison let her in, and she rushed over to the phone, her face pale. "Tell her the rest, Ethan," Skylar demanded. "Tell her about the other brides." My heart stopped. "Other brides?" "3 of them," Skylar said when Ethan stayed silent. "All in the last 5 years. Each time Aunt Eleanor found a reason to cause a scene, to break it up. Each time the family of the bride had some sort of financial connection she needed, and each time large sums of money disappeared during the chaos." I felt sick. "And you knew about this, Ethan?" "No, I swear, Harper, I just found out. Mom, she's been using my signature, my accounts. I've been blind, so stupid. But I have proof now, bank statements, documents, everything. I'm going to the police, but I needed you to know first. I need you to forgive me." Madison scoffed, but I held up my hand. Years of working at the bank had taught me to listen for what wasn't being said. "You're not going to the police, are you, Ethan?" I said quietly. "You're calling to warn me because if I go to the police, you'll go down with her." "Those weren't just her signatures on those documents, were they?" The silence on the other end was deafening. "That's what I thought." I looked at Skylar, who nodded grimly. "Send me everything you have, Skylar. Every document, every video, every piece of evidence." "Harper, please." Ethan's voice cracked. "We can fix this. Start over. I love you." "No, Ethan. You love yourself, and that's going to cost you everything." I ended the call, my hands steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Madison and Skylar watched me, waiting. "What are you going to do?" Madison asked softly. I stood up, finally ready to face the day. "First, I'm going to eat that bagel. Then we're going to my office, because if Eleanor wants to play with bank records, she's about to learn she messed with the wrong family." Skylar pulled out a USB drive from her purse. "Everything's here. The videos from yesterday, old bank statements, and copies of forged documents. She never thought I'd keep records, but after what she did to my sister..." "Your sister?" Madison and I asked simultaneously. Skylar's face hardened. The first bride. My sister wasn't just a bride who got away. After the wedding fell apart, she tried to expose Eleanor. 3 days later, she was in a car accident. Nothing was ever proven, but the implications... Chills ran down my spine. This wasn't just about a wedding ruined anymore. This was about something bigger, about justice and stopping the darkness from continuing. Call your sister, I told Skylar. It's time. We need every victim, every witness. I turned to Madison. Call my father. His friends at the FBI should hear about this. As I reached for a bagel, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Eleanor. Let's talk, dear. Just us girls, for Ethan's sake. I showed it to Madison and Skylar, both of whom exchanged worried looks. She's scared, I said, feeling my resolve grow stronger. She should be. Eleanor didn't just ruin my wedding, she gave me the perfect reason to tear everything she's built down. And I was just getting started. The security guard at the bank raised an eyebrow as I walked in, my makeup from yesterday still on my face and wearing casual clothes instead of my usual business attire. Roberts, didn't expect to see you today? What with the change of plans, Joe? I gave a small smile. Need to handle some urgent business. Madison and Skylar followed me through the quiet office to my desk. Being a financial crimes investigator had its perks like weekend access and a system that could trace transactions better than any personal laptop. I logged in. Okay, Skylar, plug in that USB. Let's see what we're dealing with. Files started populating on my screen. Madison gasped. Harper, look at these amounts, the transfers. They're all just under the reporting threshold. Classic structuring. I nodded, the investigator in me taking over. She knew exactly what she was doing. See how they're spread out 3 days apart? Different accounts, but always ending up in the same offshore shell company? Skylar leaned in closer. That's the company my sister mentioned before the accident. I typed quickly, pulling up transaction histories. There's a pattern. Large transfers right before each failed wedding, then smaller amounts trickling back over the next few months. She wasn't just stealing from the bride's family, she was using the weddings as cover for larger financial movements. Harper, Madison's voice was urgent. Your phone's blowing up. 3 missed calls from Eleanor, 5 from Ethan, and 1 text that made my blood run cold. I hope you're not at work, dear. Those files are private family matters. We wouldn't want anything happening to your career over a little peek at confidential information. She's threatening you, Madison growled. No, I said, a grim smile on my face. She's confessing. I turned to Skylar. Call your sister now. While Skylar stepped away to make the call, I kept pulling up more records. Madison, remember last Christmas when Eleanor insisted on hosting that charity gala? The one where half the city's bankers showed up? Yeah, why? Look at these donations. I pointed to the screen. Every guest made exactly the same contribution, but the tax records show different amounts. She wasn't just stealing from families, she was running a full-scale money laundering operation through fake charity events. Skylar returned, her face pale but determined. My sister's on her way. She's bringing everything she saved from 5 years ago, and she's not coming alone. What do you mean? The other brides. They stayed in touch. They've been waiting for someone to finally stand up to Eleanor. They want to help. My phone buzzed again. Ethan this time. Mom's losing it, Harper. She's destroying documents. Please, can we talk? Perfect timing, I muttered, pulling up the security camera feeds from the Walker family office. Being their bank's primary investigator had its advantages. Look who's having a weekend paper shredding party. The grainy footage showed Eleanor frantically feeding documents into a shredder while Ethan paced behind her. Their desperation was clear even through the poor video quality. Send that footage to your secure email, Madison advised. They'll try to wipe it soon. Already done. And I typed a few more commands. Every transaction they make from now on will be flagged. They're not moving another dollar without us knowing. A knock on the office door made us all jump. Joe, the security guard, stood there with 2 women I'd never seen before. Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Roberts, but these ladies insist they know you. Something about a wedding. The taller woman stepped forward, her face haunted but determined. I'm Kennedy, Skylar's sister, and this is Rebecca. She was supposed to marry Ethan 2 years ago. We hear you're finally going to take Eleanor down. I looked at these women, survivors of Eleanor's previous schemes, and felt something click into place. We weren't just gathering evidence anymore. We were building an army. Welcome to the team, I said, turning my computer screen to show them. Let's talk about how Eleanor Walker tried to destroy all our lives and how we're going to make sure she never hurts another family again. As Kennedy and Rebecca pulled up chairs, sharing details that made each previous scheme clearer, my phone lit up with one final message from Eleanor. You have no idea what you're getting into, little girl. Some fights aren't worth the cost. I showed the message to the group. Madison squeezed my shoulder. Skylar nodded grimly. Kennedy and Rebecca exchanged knowing looks. That's where you're wrong, Eleanor, I whispered, forwarding the threat to my secure email. This fight is worth everything, because with each passing minute, each new piece of evidence, we were building something stronger than Eleanor's lies. We were building the truth, and the truth, as they say, will set you free, or in Eleanor's case, send her to prison. Sunday morning, my apartment had turned into a war room. 6 women, countless coffee cups, and evidence spread across every surface. Kennedy and Rebecca had brought their own files, years of collecting proof that seemed incomplete on its own, but created a devastating picture when combined. Look at this. Kennedy spread out bank statements on my coffee table. Every wedding was scheduled exactly 3 months after a major charity event. It wasn't random. Madison, who'd been typing everything into a timeline, looked up. The timing matches those offshore transfers Harper found. She was using the weddings to cover her tracks. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Ethan. I'd stopped answering but kept every desperate voicemail. Each one was more revealing than the last. Harper, please. Mom's saying crazy things. She's threatening to pin everything on me. I don't know what to do. Rebecca shook her head. Same old Ethan. He tried that victim act with me too, always playing both sides. Speaking of both sides, Skylar pulled out her phone. Look what just got posted to the family business page. We crowded around to see a perfectly staged photo of Eleanor and Ethan, both looking solemn. The caption read, In light of recent family events, Walker Industries is announcing an internal audit. We maintain our commitment to transparency and integrity. Transparency? Madison scoffed. That's rich. No, I smiled. That's desperate. They're trying to get ahead of the story. Skylar, when's the next board meeting? Tomorrow morning. All major shareholders will be there. I stood up, moving to my whiteboard where we'd mapped out Eleanor's network. Then that's our deadline. Rebecca, you said you still have friends in local news? She nodded, already pulling out her phone. They've been dying for a story on the Walkers for years, just needed solid proof. They'll have it. Kennedy added, every document, every transaction, every threat. My landline rang. The one number Eleanor didn't have. It was my father. Harper, my FBI contact is very interested in what you found, but honey, you need to be careful. People like Eleanor, they don't go down easily. I know, Dad. That's why we're not giving her any wiggle room. I looked at the women around me, each one a survivor of Eleanor's schemes. We're doing this right. After I hung up, Skylar spoke softly. She's already calling her high-powered friends. I saw her contact list. Judges, politicians. Let her, I said firmly. Because while she's doing that, I pulled out a fresh piece of paper. We're going to write a letter to every single charity she's ever worked with, every donor, every board member. Madison immediately caught on. A warning about the fraud. Exactly. But we're not sending it yet. I turned to Kennedy. How good are you at getting Eleanor angry? Angry enough to confess? Kennedy's smile was sharp. You want me to crash her damage control brunch today? The one she's hosting for close family friends to explain her side of the wedding disaster? Rebecca chimed in. We'll all go. Every single bride she tried to destroy. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Mom's losing it. She's talking about leaving the country. Please, can we meet? Just us. Perfect. I showed them the message. He's on his way. You're meeting him at the brunch alone? Madison protested. It's too dangerous. It's too perfect, I corrected her. Eleanor wants to control the narrative. Let's see how she handles it when all her lies come crashing down at once in front of everyone she's trying to fool. Skylar started gathering the documents. I'll make copies. Lots of copies, Rebecca added. And I'll call my camera crew. They can be ready in an hour. I looked at my ruined wedding dress, still hanging in the corner. No more white dresses or innocent brides for Eleanor to destroy today. We're showing up in black. The room buzzed with energy as everyone moved into action. CLA and Rebecca coordinating with the press, Skylar organizing documents, Madison setting up secure email drops for all the evidence. My phone buzzed one final time. Eleanor. I heard you're meeting Ethan. Smart girl. Finally seeing reason. Let's put this unfortunate incident behind us. I showed the group the message, and Kennedy laughed. Oh, she has no idea what's coming. No, I agreed, picking up my car keys. She doesn't, but she's about to learn that the little girl she tried to destroy grew up, and we've been taking notes. Eleanor had spent years perfecting her schemes, but she made one crucial mistake. She left too many survivors, and now we weren't just looking for revenge, we were looking for justice. Ladies, I said, grabbing my bag, let's go crash a brunch. The brunch venue looked exactly like Eleanor's. Expensive, pristine, and fake. I adjusted my black dress, feeling the weight of the documents in my purse. Around me, Kennedy, Rebecca, and Skylar stood ready, each wearing their version of funeral attire. We weren't mourning. We were here for justice. Remember, I whispered. Let her make the first move. She always does. Through the restaurant windows, I saw Eleanor holding court at a large table, Ethan beside her like a puppet on strings. The close family friends she'd gathered looked exactly as I expected. Wealthy, influential, and completely unaware of who Eleanor really was. Harper? Ethan spotted me first, his face paling. What are you... Who are they? Eleanor turned, her practiced smile freezing as she recognized Kennedy and Rebecca. What is the meaning of this? Hello, Eleanor. Kennedy stepped forward. It's been what? 5 years since you destroyed my wedding, and Rebecca's was 2 years ago? We thought it was time for a reunion. The other guests started whispering, looking between us with growing interest. Eleanor's smile became strained. I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan, escort these women out. Actually, I opened my purse. I think your guests might be interested in these. I pulled out the bank statements, the charity records, and the evidence of years of fraud, especially since many of them are listed as donors to your fake charities. Eleanor's face contorted. How dare you? These are private family matters. Private? Rebecca laughed coldly. Like how you privately threatened each of us, privately stole from our families, privately arranged accidents when people got too close to the truth? The whispers grew louder. Ethan stood frozen, looking between his mother and me. It's all lies, Eleanor announced, but her voice shook. Ethan, tell them. But Ethan was staring at the documents I'd spread on the table. Mom, these are my signatures, but I never... Of course you did, Eleanor snapped. You signed everything I put in front of you, just like a good son should. The silence that followed her outburst was deafening. She just confessed in front of everyone to forging her son's signature. I have copies for everyone, Skylar announced, pulling out more files, including the federal investigators who should be arriving any minute. Eleanor's mask finally cracked completely. You ungrateful little brats! Do you know who I am? What I can do to you? We know exactly who you are, I said calmly. That's why we're here. No more brides, Eleanor. No more schemes. No more victims. The sound of sirens in the distance made Eleanor's face go white. The truth was finally catching up to her, and there was nowhere left to run. The perfect brunch was over, but justice was just beginning. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, police interviews, and media chaos. I sat in my lawyer's office, watching Eleanor's empire crumble on every news channel. "Another victim has come forward," Madison announced, showing me her phone. This time, from 8 years ago. Eleanor didn't just target brides, she ruined entire families. My lawyer, Ms. Rodriguez, spread more documents across her desk. The evidence is overwhelming. Tax fraud, embezzlement, money laundering through fake charities, and that's just the financial crimes. "What about the threats?" Kennedy asked. She'd become a constant presence during our legal battles, her case finally getting the attention it deserved. "The accidents that happened to people who spoke up?" "Being investigated separately," Ms. Rodriguez confirmed. "The FBI is particularly interested in the pattern of convenient tragedies around Eleanor's schemes." My phone buzzed Ethan again. His messages had become increasingly desperate as more evidence emerged. "Harper, please, they're freezing all our accounts. Mom's lawyers quit. I don't know what to do." I showed the message to Madison, who scoffed. "He's still trying to play victim after everything before I could respond." Ms. Rodriguez's assistant burst in. "Turn on Channel 7. Eleanor Walker is making a statement." "We," Ed around the office TV there. She stood outside the courthouse. Her designer outfit slightly wrinkled, her perfect mask finally showing cracks. "These accusations are absurd." She declared to the reporters, "I am the victim here. These vengeful women led by my former daughter-in-law are trying to destroy my family's reputation out of spite." "Really?" I muttered, pulling out my phone. "Let's see how that plays." I pressed send on the email I'd been saving, the one containing videos of every threat, every manipulation, every cruel moment Eleanor thought no one was watching. Within minutes, they started appearing on every news site. "Mrs. Walker," a reporter called out, "can you explain this footage of you threatening Harper Roberts at her wedding?" Eleanor's face went pale. Another reporter jumped in. "What about these bank records showing systematic fraud?" "No comment." Eleanor tried to retreat, but the damage was done. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan, but different from his usual pleading. "How could you do this to us?" "To me. I loved you." I typed back. "One final resp no." "Ethan, you love the idea of me, someone you could control as your mother controlled you, but I'm not that person anymore." "Ms. Roberts, a mess." Rodriguez called my attention back. "The DA wants to meet. They're offering Eleanor a deal, but they want statements from all her victims first." I looked around the room at the women who had become my strength: Madison, Kennedy, Rebecca, and Skylar. Each of us had suffered under Eleanor's schemes, but together we had found the courage to fight back. "Tell them we're ready." I said all of us. The next day we walked into the DA's office together, a united front of women Eleanor had tried to break, but we weren't victims anymore. We were survivors, witnesses, and the ones who would finally bring her to justice. As we gave our statements, I couldn't help but think about that wedding day that seemed so long ago now. Eleanor had thought she was ruining my life. Instead, she had given me the strength to find my voice and the allies to make it heard. The headlines that evening said it all. "Walker family matriarch faces federal charges. Decades of fraud exposed. Justice wasn't just coming. It was already here." 1 year later, I stood in my new office, watching the sunrise over the city skyline. The soft hum of the wall-mounted TV played the morning news, where Eleanor's sentencing was still making waves. 15 years, Madison remarked, bringing in our morning coffee, plus full restitution to all the families she defrauded. Not bad for a woman who thought she was untouchable. I smiled, picking up the framed newspaper article on my desk. Walker family fraud. How one bride stood up and exposed decades of corruption. Below it sat a group photo of all of us, Madison, Kennedy, Rebecca, Skylar, and me, taken right after the verdict. "Have you seen Ethan's email?" Madison asked cautiously. I nodded, letting out a small sigh. His last attempt at contact came yesterday. I'm sorry for everything. I see now what she made me become. Maybe someday. I didn't respond. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. My phone buzzed with a message from Kennedy. Turn on Channel 7. They're doing a special report on financial fraud prevention. Guess who they interviewed? I switched channels just in time to see myself on screen, speaking at a victims advocate conference. The most dangerous predators don't look dangerous. They wear designer clothes and host charity galas, but we're here to say no more. Look at you, Madison grinned. From banker to fraud investigator to public speaker, Eleanor would hate it. That's not why I do it, I replied, but I couldn't help smiling. Though it is a nice bonus. My new office door had my name and title, Harper Roberts, Director of Financial Crime Prevention. After everything had unfolded, several major banks approached me to help develop better fraud detection systems. It turned out my experience with Trish had given me unique insights. Rebecca's case had helped another victim come forward. Yesterday, Madison said, checking her phone, that support group you started is making a difference. I glanced at the photos on my wall, not just of our legal victory, but of the lives we'd rebuilt. Kennedy had opened her own business. Rebecca was writing a book, and Skylar had reconciled with her sister, who was finally getting the therapy she needed after years of Eleanor's manipulation. Sometimes I think about that wedding day, I admitted. How I thought everything was falling apart, when really it was falling into place. Madison finished for me. Though I still say we should have kept that cake you paid for. We laughed, and I felt that familiar warmth of gratitude for everything I gained by losing what I thought I wanted. My assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Roberts, the FBI task force is ready for your presentation on identifying familial fraud patterns. Be right there. I gathered my materials, pausing to straighten a small frame on my desk. It held a simple quote. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the day that changes everything for the better. As I walked to the conference room, my phone lit up with messages from our support group members, women who had found their voice, their strength, and their way back to themselves. Eleanor had wanted to destroy me that day at my wedding. Instead, she helped me find my purpose. While she sat in her prison cell, I was here, turning her cruelty into something positive, something helpful, something real. I'd lost a wedding but gained a mission, lost a husband but found my strength. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the happy ending isn't the one you planned, it's the one you fight for. The story that began with a broken heart led to a life I never could have imagined, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth, it's living your best life despite those who tried to break you. And that's exactly what I intended to keep doing, one day at a time. How do you find your true power when everything you thought you wanted falls apart? What if the most painful chapter of your life leads to the strength you never knew you had? Harper's dream wedding turns into a nightmare when her mother-in-law, Eleanor, manipulates and humiliates her in front of the guests. But what begins as a breakdown quickly transforms into a moment of empowerment, as Harper uncovers the truth about Eleanor's fraudulent schemes. With the help of other women who have been victimized by Eleanor, Harper takes action, exposing the corruption and injustice that had been hiding in plain sight for years. As Eleanor's empire crumbles, Harper finds her purpose and a new mission to help others. Looking at this story from the perspective of personal growth and transformation, Harper's journey highlights the incredible strength that can come from adversity. The way she rises from the emotional wreckage of her wedding day, refusing to let Eleanor's cruelty define her, shows how resilience can turn trauma into empowerment. By uncovering the fraud, not just in the family business but in her own life, Harper moves from a place of victimhood to one of control. Her choice to fight for justice rather than wallow in despair demonstrates the profound shift from weakness to power, showing that even the most devastating moments can pave the way for profound personal growth and societal impact. What would you do if the very event that seemed to destroy you became the catalyst for a new, powerful direction in your life? Can you transform your pain into a force for change? Have you ever faced a moment where everything you thought was important fell apart, only to realize it was leading you to something greater? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. How did you rise from your struggles? And what lessons did you learn along the way? Let's inspire each other to keep fighting for what's right, no matter the cost.
My name is Katie. Last Christmas, I accidentally accumulated about 6 pounds of fat from eating luxurious Christmas dishes. So this year, I am dieting in preparation for Christmas. If I lose 6 pounds now, I'll be okay even if I gain 6 pounds during Christmas. Huh? That's not how it works? No way. From Christmas to New Year's, there's just too much delicious food. Soon, I'll even buy some Valentine's chocolate for myself. Oops, I'm drooling. Looks like I'm going to get fat this year too, sigh. So, today is about a winter memory of mine. I'd love for you to hear it. It was when I was 25 years old. I had been dating my boyfriend, Edward, for several years, and our marriage had been decided. I introduced Edward to my parents, a so-called marriage introduction. My parents liked Edward, and the marriage would have gone smoothly. But a problem occurred. As soon as my older sister, Cindy, returned from work, she was smitten with Edward. It's strange, but as sisters, I could understand her feelings and thoughts. Cindy had fallen in love with Edward at first sight. I hoped it was just my imagination. But Cindy had blushed and held his hand when Edward reached out to shake hands. She always looked up at him when talking. I think it's inappropriate for a sister's boyfriend, but she probably did it unconsciously. You can't stop people's feelings, and I assumed Cindy wouldn't get serious and would stop herself at some point. However, after Edward left, Cindy caught me fresh out of the bath and in just a towel and said, "You should call off the wedding." When I asked why, she said things like, "That man is a player and you can find someone better." However, there was no basis for these claims. "Why do you think he's a player?" I asked. Cindy replied, "It's a woman's intuition." Cindy had never had a boyfriend before. How could I believe the intuition of someone with no experience in relationships? Instead, I trust the character of Edward, whom I have observed for years. Naturally, I took my sister's advice lightly and didn't really pay much attention to it. Edward started visiting my parents' house more often since he said he wanted to get along with my family. My parents were happy, and I certainly didn't mind my future husband getting along with my parents. A good relationship was being built. But Cindy was trying to build a different kind of good relationship with Edward. According to Edward, when I wasn't around, Cindy grabbed his arm, pressed her chest against him, and asked, "Don't you think Katie is childish?" She even asked for his contact information and pretended to fall and expose her skirt. Edward found it so contrived that it was funny. If he had taken it seriously, I would have been really worried. But Cindy, thinking that Edward wouldn't reject her strongly because she was my sister, kept pressing him with a sweet voice whenever they met. Originally, it was love at first sight. But the fact that Edward worked for a fairly large company also hit Cindy's heart hard. He's a man with good prospects and my type, she locked on and wouldn't let go. My parents saw Cindy's shameful behavior but said nothing. Or rather, they have never said anything to Cindy, it wasn't new. Honestly, Cindy has always been the type who can't do anything. If you ask her to reheat side dishes, she somehow manages to melt non-heat resistant plastic plates in the microwave. And, as always, she was bad at studying. She was bad at sports, especially swimming lessons, which she always tried to skip by using any means possible, hurting her leg, feeling unwell, or getting a rash. She couldn't do studies, sports, or housework. Honestly, she wasn't even particularly good-looking. But our parents, simply because she was the eldest daughter, doted on Cindy and ordered me to support her behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, because I shouldn't stand out, I was supposed to highlight my sister. It's a harsh story for siblings. Well, for our parents. The helpless poor child was probably a factor that made Cindy endearing. Weirdly, I was capable of anything, the type that could learn anything quickly. Adults might have found it unappealing because I was too teachable. So I even effortlessly managed the mission of highlighting my sister. And there was a time when I pretended to be incapable outside the home. After I outgrew my teenage years, I thought, if I keep this up, I'll fail my exams. And began to rebel against my parents and do as I pleased. If I had continued listening to them, I might have really become incapable. This rebellion made Cindy start to dislike me a bit for no longer supporting her. But we were never on bad terms. We talked normally, and I even advised her occasionally. The extreme doting on Cindy and her hostility toward me. There were some twisted aspects, but it was still a normal family. However, because Edward never showed interest in Cindy, this balance was disrupted. I can't approve of my younger sister getting married first. The night before the wedding, Cindy told our parents, "No, it's okay, Cindy will get married soon too." That's right, Cindy. It's not about that. Normally, the elder sister marries before the younger one does. She's too young for marriage. But, the wedding is tomorrow. What, Mom, you're not on my side? Am I going to be the pitiful elder sister who gets married off after her younger sister? That's not. I quietly listened to my sister's meltdown in the living room from the hallway. Should I wait for my inexperienced sister to get married? I'd get old in no time. Really, what is she talking about? Well, she'll calm down once she vents, I assumed. All right. Dad and Mom will skip the wedding tomorrow, so please forgive us. Right, Cindy? What? I couldn't believe my ears. Mom also agreed with Dad, begging Cindy for forgiveness. What is this? Followers of my sister? It was almost like worship. This was beyond mere doting. But Cindy sighed and reluctantly agreed, fine, I'll put up with that. At least make it a wedding not recognized by the family. She really didn't want me and Edward to get married. Probably because she was in love with him. Unbelievable. Because of Cindy's unrequited love, my parents decided not to attend the wedding. On the day of the wedding, which was supposed to be a sunny day, I couldn't sleep well and was completely sleep-deprived. It wasn't because I was too excited about the wedding. I spent the whole night feeling sick, remembering the conversation between my sister and parents. When my parents officially informed me of their decision to skip the wedding, I'll never forget the smirking look on my sister's face. At the venue, I had to tell Edward and his parents about my parents' absence. I'm sorry. My sister opposed this marriage, so my family will be absent, I said. There couldn't be a more miserable report. Parents not attending their daughter's wedding, even his parents couldn't believe it. Edward's parents were silent for a while after hearing my report. On what was supposed to be a festive day, such a heavy atmosphere. It was the worst. At that moment, my mother-in-law took my hand. And soon after, my father-in-law placed his hand on top of ours. "You have a family right here, don't you? Forget about it? Please don't make today a sad day. Look, smile." With my mother-in-law's gentle smile and the warmth of my father-in-law's hand, I burst into tears. Hey, Katie. I'm your husband. Don't say things like my family is absent, it makes me sad. Edward gently stroked my head. Tears streamed down my face as my in-laws. And Edward frantically but laughingly tried to calm me down. Bride. Don't cry, don't cry. Look, your makeup. In the midst of all this, my mother-in-law looked me straight in the face and said, "Katie, it might be hard to leave your family behind. But this will surely be a new beginning. Now, go build your own family." Feeling abandoned by my biological parents, my mother-in-law held me tight. Edward and my father-in-law followed suit. "It'll be all right." Just as my mother-in-law said, this will be a new beginning. I vowed to build a happy family of my own, and so, I married Edward without a hitch. 15 years later, a daughter and 2 sons were born between my husband and me. My daughter, capable and able to do anything, naturally took care of her 2 rowdy brothers who were always wreaking havoc at home. Still, her way of scolding them, "Enough already," sounded just like me. Oh dear, what a handful. Edward's job was going smoothly, and we had bought a single-family home. Enjoying peaceful days, until troublemakers showed up, none other than my father, mother, and sister. We had been estranged since the wedding, and I hadn't given them our new address. However, somehow, the 3 of them showed up at our house. Naturally, the first words upon seeing their faces weren't warm greetings like, "Long time no see, but what are you doing here?" "There's something we need from Katie," said my sister. Even my parents begged me, saying, "You're the only one we can ask." What could it be? What could they possibly need from someone they haven't seen in 15 years? As I stood silent, mixed feelings of wanting and not wanting to hear more, my mother broke the silence. "Give Cindy your husband." What? Even Edward, who had come to the door to check what was happening, stood dumbfounded just like me. Wait. I don't follow. Why would you say I should give Edward to Cindy? I asked sharply, and both my parents looked embarrassed, while only my sister seemed arrogantly assured. Cindy is still single. She's turning 42 this year. And what of it? I was even more puzzled by my father's words. Edward felt the same way. The truth is, Cindy's company went bankrupt recently, and she's now unemployed. Oh, that's unfortunate. Being single and jobless, you can understand we're worried about Cindy's future. Your sisters, after all, you should feel the same. Looking into my parents' eyes staring intently at me, I thought to myself, no, not really. But kept quiet, more curious about what they would say next, despite finding the conversation tedious. I just wanted them to get to the point without interrupting. It turns out, Cindy has always loved Edward, and she's still alone. You've enjoyed your married life with Edward, right? Please, let Cindy have the rest of her life with him. What the? While I was stunned, Edward looked at me, unable to keep up with the sudden turn of events, as if his soul had left his body. Ignoring us, my parents begged, and my sister still sat there smugly, as if certain that Edward would be hers. Well, our parents always gave her anything she wanted. Maybe that's why she's so mistaken, but this is just awful. As I held my head in shock, Edward pulled me aside. It seemed his soul had returned. Hey, isn't this a chance? Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yeah, because it's like that joke you made while drunk has come to life. Should we do it? We quickly separated and faced my sister and parents again. So, Cindy, you really love Edward that much? To my question, my sister, surprised, said, Eh? Yes, yes. I've always loved him, really, really loved him. I see. That's some strong feeling. You've loved someone else's husband for 15 years, right? Yes, it's been tough, thinking of you and Edward together. We were getting along so well. Despite her confidently smug expression, Edward and I managed to keep straight faces. We lost then. If you feel that strongly, I'll step aside. The words shocked our parents. Immediately, my mother exclaimed, Really? But you loved Edward too, didn't you? Well, actually, Edward has also. I've always loved Cindy. Following my lead, Edward responded without missing a beat, causing my sister's face to turn bright red. See? I knew it. You didn't mind when I linked arms with you. The way you looked at me, it was so affectionate. It's been a long wait, we're finally going to be together. I struggled to keep from laughing. Hey, Edward, you're looking down. Pretending to tear up, but I can see your shoulders shaking. Hang in there. Let's spend our lives together, Ned. Cindy, who had been calling him by his name until just now, suddenly started calling him by a nickname. Over these 15 years, she must have built up quite an intense imaginary relationship with Edward in her mind. I'm happy, Cindy. Support me from now on, Edward smiled too. Yes. Of course. Then I'm quitting my job. What? Her blush vanished in an instant, her eyes wide with shock. I want to be with you every second, without wasting a moment. So I'm quitting my job to always be by your side. What? I won't even go outside. If possible, follow me to the bathroom. I'll always be watching you while you do the housework. As Edward cheerfully spoke, my sister froze, then began to panic. My parents were also flustered. I'm not working either, so that would be troubling. Why? If we're together, what's there to fear? Even without money, we'd be happy, right? No, but there are insurance premiums and stuff in modern America. This isn't some old tale. You mean you can't love me without money? It's not like that. Her eyes clearly avoided mine. I quickly chimed in. Well, Edward, make sure you pay a generous alimony when we divorce, okay? Edward smiled. Don't worry, your sister and your parents will take care of it. This caused my parents to pale and exchange glances. Cindy, I think it's not right to take a husband from your sister after all. That's right, Cindy. That's going a bit too far. Their sudden change of heart was as dramatically swift as it was beautiful. What? You guys said you would definitely get Edward for me. No, but Cindy, that's a different matter. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Whose side are you on? My sister was in a frenzy, yanking at our mother's hair as she tried to calm her, while our father desperately tried to intervene. It was like a scene from hell. And Edward and I just watched for a while. Finally, Edward, trying to change the course of the conversation, said, excuse me. Everyone suddenly turned to look at him. Honestly, I'm not at all into your sister. I was being polite because she's Katie's sister, but honestly, I can't stand women who make passes like that. It's just a turn-off. Yeah, exactly. It's a total turn-off. And the assumption that I like her is just too much. I really can't deal with women who jump to conclusions like that. Edward's frankness left my sister and our parents speechless. Huh? So what was all that before, Ned? Could you not call my husband by his nickname? There's no way Edward could love you, Cindy. We have children and we're happy together. I intervened as my sister approached Edward with a pale face. What the heck, Cindy? You tricked us. How can you not realize you were being tricked? Why would a man you haven't heard from in 15 years suddenly be in love with you? Are you delusional? My sister's face turned red with tears, probably from frustration. If you were such a charming woman, it might be one thing. But no one wants a delusional woman who's unemployed and leeching off her parents. Plus, you've always had your mom do the household chores. So you probably can't even handle those, right? With those skills at over 40, even if you got married, you'd likely be dumped. Edward laughed in the background, seemingly hitting the mark. As my sister couldn't stop her tears, sobbing uncontrollably. My parents comforted her but looked troubled as if to say, she's got a point. Well, that's how it is. Edward isn't going anywhere. That's right, so please give up, big sister. My sister broke down completely, crying childishly. It's embarrassing for an adult, she really hasn't grown up at all. Learn from this and don't get involved with us ever again. We're cutting ties with you for good. If Cindy struggles because she's unemployed, don't expect any help from us. With that, I closed the front door. When the kids asked what was happening, I said, it's almost Halloween and it seems a bad demon showed up at the wrong time. My eldest son suggested seeing her, which I stopped. But from outside, we could still hear my sister's wails. 5 years later, Cindy is still single as expected. She managed to find a job. But due to her reckless behavior, hitting on young coworkers and married men, she was eventually fired. Desperate for marriage, she continued her antics and is now banned from matchmaking parties. It looks like she'll remain single for life. My parents, even after retirement, work multiple jobs to save money, likely realizing they can't depend on Cindy for their future care. After all the doting they did, they should work hard and realize it's because of their sister. Meanwhile, I live a relaxed life as a housewife, thanks to my capable children and husband's earnings. No need for a job, though sometimes I wonder if working would have balanced out my overeating during Christmas. As my daughter, who is perfectly slim, declares she wants to diet, I try desperately to stop her. Wait until you've grown sideways like your mom. My 2 sons have taken up dancing, recently performed at a local event, and dream of joining a famous dance group. Please keep the group going until my sons grow up, I think to myself. My in-laws frequently visit, and we often share meals. I call them in-laws here. But honestly, I think of them as my real parents. We're planning a luxurious resort vacation during the Easter holidays. I hope they stay healthy and continue to share their lives with us. Though things were rough before marriage, it's been nothing but happiness since. I truly feel I've found my real family. You're a killer. Screaming that, my mother-in-law attacked me, instinctively dodging. She then violently struck the door of the hospital room. This is a hospital. And I had just been called here by my mother-in-law because My husband was hospitalized after a traffic accident and needed me to rush over. What does this behavior mean? What on earth happened? What do you mean by this? I shouted that, keeping my distance from her. You pushed my son towards the road, didn't you? Stunned by her accusation, I clenched my stomach and vehemently denied it. I did nothing of the sort. Who told you such nonsense? At my words, my mother-in-law smirked. Just as I was pondering why, a voice came from behind me. It was me. Talking about nonsense after pushing someone, how can you even say that? It was my husband, speaking from the bed. His legs were bandaged. And he looked at me with utter contempt. My name is Heather, a 27-year-old housewife. Before getting married, I worked as an office clerk in a small company. And I met Nick through a friend's introduction. Nick worked in a company in the same industry, and we hit it off talking about work. After a while, Nick made his move and we got married. And I quit my job to move closer to him. Since Nick was living with his parents, we needed to find a new place for the two of us. However, we couldn't find a satisfying apartment, and soon after the marriage, Nick said, I didn't want to say this so soon, but I was hoping we could live with my mother, who is ill, at my parents' house. Of course, if we could find a great place, that would be best. But she's not forcing us, she'd be happy if we could stay. So please, this is tough, but okay, right? Seeing this, I realized Nick had always intended to bring me to live with his mother. Thinking he was considering my feelings, he didn't force cohabitation immediately. I was anxious about living with my mother-in-law right after getting married. However, when we went to his parents' house to announce our marriage, I got the impression that she was a kind and cheerful person. Moreover, their house had a great location and was impressive. I told Nick, I understand. But I still don't know much about your mother or the house. So please, give me plenty of advice on housework and chores at the beginning. Nick replied with a smile, of course. We promised to work together. I agreed to the cohabitation. And my mother-in-law said warmly after we started living together, don't be so tense, Heather. For me, you are like a daughter. Just relax. Since she wasn't in good health, I mostly took care of the housework. Their house was large and cleaning was a chore. But I worked hard to keep it clean every day. I also cooked eagerly for my mother-in-law, and she seemed to enjoy every meal, always saying, the food Heather makes is delicious. I am so happy to have you as my daughter-in-law. This gradually eased my tension. But then something happened that made me anxious about living with my mother-in-law. One day, as usual, I served dinner and she commented after tasting it, the flavor is a bit strong today. It was meat and potatoes. And I hadn't changed the seasoning. Puzzled, I apologized. I'm sorry, perhaps I added too much salt today. She replied, don't worry. It's tasty. Relieved, I thought maybe fatigue was affecting my cooking, as I had read somewhere that tiredness can make flavors stronger. Maybe I'm just tired. I'll go to sleep early today. I muttered to myself and went to bed early. However, from that day on, every time I served a meal, she would become grumpy, which had never happened before. Meal times became distressing, and I started to feel anxious. A few days later, she burst out, eating such strong flavored food will make me sick. Are you trying to shorten my life? I had never been scolded so harshly as an adult, and my mind went blank. I stuttered an apology. I always cook the same way. Sorry, I'll make it lighter. These days continued almost daily. At that time, I felt that since I was living there at her grace, I had to listen to her or I might be kicked out. Without a next house lined up, it would be a disaster, so I resolved to save up for moving funds and decided to study cooking for my own benefit. I started researching online, bought books on low-salt cooking, and learned to make meals with less salt and balanced nutrition, considering my mother-in-law's health. But despite my efforts, her comments became harsher. "A woman who can only cook like this is worthless. You are disqualified as a bride." From then on, my mother-in-law seemed to check on my actions more and more. After I cleaned the floor, she would rub it with her finger and say, "The cleanliness is about 60 points. It's mediocre. Maybe you should clean it again." Even when going to the store or a supermarket, she would start fretting. "Don't leave me alone. Planning to run away, aren't you?" Every time I went out, I reassured her I would never run away. "Please calm down." However, my persuasion was in vain for a while, and I couldn't earn my mother-in-law's trust. She began watching me around the clock. Because of this, I had absolutely no time or freedom for myself. However, this all abruptly came to an end a few months later. One day, my mother-in-law said with a smile, "Heather, I've decided I won't comment on your actions anymore. It makes both of us uncomfortable and awkward." I was bewildered and responded, "Really? I'm glad to have earned your trust." Although I was relieved, I couldn't genuinely be happy because of her previous intense scrutiny. I suspected she might be monitoring me in some other way. Sure enough, my intuition was spot on. After some investigation, I discovered that unbeknownst to me, my mother-in-law had placed a GPS tracker on me. It was frightening to realize that someone could secretly track you with a GPS in this day and age. I had reached my limit. But getting angry and seizing her phone was the only way to deactivate the GPS. Hoping my husband would see the GPS tracking as over the line, I consulted him after my mother-in-law went to sleep. "Nick, while you're at work, your mom watches my every move all day. Even though I used to be praised for my housework, recently I've been scored on my cleaning and cooking. And sometimes she verbally abuses me. I've been trying just as hard as before. And now with the GPS tracking me all day, I really can't rest and it's tough." However, to my dismay, my husband defended his mother, saying, "Maybe she's doing it to educate you because your housework is sloppy. You need to be aware of your own shortcomings." I was stunned and nearly lost my temper. Since my mother-in-law was sleeping in the bedroom, I couldn't retaliate or argue. I realized there was no one on my side in this house. The only people I could confide in were friends from my hometown, with whom I occasionally exchanged messages to vent my stress. My parents were too busy, and my childhood home was far away, so I couldn't call for help. From that day, the conversations between my husband and me dwindled. One day, before going to work, my husband mentioned offhandedly, "Work's going to be busy. I'm up for a promotion, so I won't be home for a while." With Nick not coming home for a while, it would just be my mother-in-law and me. Honestly, living with her and enduring her constant surveillance and snide remarks felt daunting. Yet, despite saying that, I couldn't leave my ailing mother-in-law alone when she needed assistance. I resolved to endure until my husband returned. If my mother-in-law's nastiness didn't stop, I'd have a serious talk with him when he came back about possibly leaving. With these thoughts in mind, the next day, my mother-in-law asked me to go shopping. "Heather, could you go to the supermarket in the next town over? They have a sale on toilet paper today." She pointed it out on the map, insisting it was the only place selling the brand she preferred, which had come up in conversations with neighbors. The supermarket she mentioned was an hour's walk away, and we usually bought our toilet paper at a nearby store at a similar price. Puzzled, I hesitated to respond, prompting her to urge, "What's the matter? It'll sell out, so hurry up. We can't miss today's deal. Please, do this for me," as she turned on the TV. I sighed quietly, ensuring my mother-in-law didn't notice. Saying out loud that I didn't want to go that far for toilet paper would only aggravate her more. While the idea of going to the supermarket felt bothersome, the thought of being away from her for a longer time provided some relief. Trying to ease the tension, I laughed and said, "It's a supermarket I've never been to, and I'm bad with directions. I'll try to find it using the map," and left the house. Sigh, what am I even doing every day? As I was heading home after successfully completing the shopping, I muttered to myself when suddenly, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. "You're taking too long shopping." Expecting to be scolded, I nervously answered the phone. However, contrary to my expectations, my mother-in-law urgently said, "Nick has been in an accident and taken to the hospital. His condition is critical. So please come right away." I was completely taken aback by the sudden news and struggled to process everything. "Nick's hospitalized," I blurted out. I had many questions, but my mother-in-law hung up abruptly, leaving me increasingly anxious. All I knew was that Nick had been seriously injured, to the extent that hospitalization was necessary. Could it be life-threatening? Or was he unable to communicate while bedridden? Lost in thought, I was hardly present as I made my way to the hospital. Minutes later, I hesitantly opened the door to Nick's hospital room, praying he was all right. Seeing him lying on the bed, I rushed over, asking, "Nick, are you okay?" He seemed conscious, but stubbornly avoided eye contact. As I was puzzled by his behavior, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up and shouted, "Nick has a serious leg fracture because of the accident. It's your fault, isn't it? What are you going to do about this?" "What? Me?" With no recollection of the incident, all I could do was stand there dumbfounded. Then, Nick looked at me and sneered, "Don't play dumb. You pushed me while I was out working, and I got hit by a motorcycle because of it." Even the victim himself was blaming me. I didn't do such a thing. Despite my desperate denials, my mother-in-law yelled, "Enough. I've told you many times you're the culprit. Just admit it. What you're doing is as bad as murder. So pay for the medical bills and the emotional distress, and let's get divorced, you horrible woman." Unable to bear being falsely accused, I protested. "Wait. There's no way I did anything. I wasn't even there. And I don't know Nick's work schedule or his days off." I refused to accept the blame for something I hadn't done. At that moment, the police and a woman entered the hospital room. The police greeted my husband, Nick, and then went to speak with the attending physician. The woman who remained looked at me, her expression one of sudden realization, and said, "Ah. Thank you so much for earlier. I apologize for barging in suddenly. I am Jane, and I actually supervise your husband at work. I came to visit and hear about what happened." She introduced herself politely. Nick, wide-eyed, exclaimed, "What? You know each other?" I told Nick, "Yes, sort of," and looked at Jane. That morning, I had noticed something my husband had forgotten. This is important. I need to deliver it right now. What Nick had forgotten was the key to a company car. He occasionally brought it home, saying it was for driving the car at work. I tried calling him immediately, but couldn't reach him. So I decided to go to his office to deliver it directly. When I hurriedly delivered the key to the office, the woman who handled it was Jane. Unaware of everything, Nick pointed at me and told Jane, "Senior, you should stay away from this one. She's really the worst kind of terrible person." Jane, unfazed, asked Nick, "Why do you think so?" Nick then became frantic, saying, "Because I got seriously injured, and it's all her fault. I was out on a field visit when she suddenly pushed me from behind, causing me to stumble into the road and ultimately get hit by a motorcycle." Jane responded, "I see, that's unfortunate." Then Nick added, "Right? It was around noon, and I was looking up where to eat lunch. But then this happened, just terrible," and began to seek sympathy from Jane. However, Jane's expression suddenly hardened, and she glared at Nick. "That's strange. Your wife was at our workplace at that time. She had come to deliver the company car key you forgot. That story doesn't add up." Jane continued sternly, "Moreover, isn't this key a duplicate you made? All keys for the company cars are accounted for. There are no records of this car having two keys. This key shouldn't even exist. So why was it at your house?" Nick's face turned pale, and he stammered, "Huh? Maybe. I hit my head in the accident, so my memory might be mixed up. I really don't remember anything about the key. Could you maybe ask someone from General Affairs instead?" he said, nervously looking at Jane. Jane firmly replied, "I won't let you say you don't remember. Discovering a duplicated key is a serious issue for the company. It's not like we came to talk to you without investigating. We already have information from Amy in General Affairs." Hearing this, Nick suddenly looked shocked and blurted out, "Please stop, my wife is here. I admit I made the duplicate." Feeling suspicious, I requested, "Could you please tell me more about this?" "Thank you." Jane agreed. "I understand. It might be painful for you. But I think it's a sin to hide the truth from those who should hear it. Actually, your husband duplicated the key and used the company car for a secret meeting with Amy. I processed the situation and confronted Nick. What? You were cheating?" Nick continued to make excuses. "No, maybe someone was using the car pretending to be me. Maybe they put the key in my bag to frame me." Nick looked smug as if he had thought of a clever excuse, but Jane sighed. "We checked the dashcam footage, and it's clear that you and Amy were getting along well in the car. Should we show it to your wife too?" Faced with undeniable evidence, Nick clenched his teeth and, after a deep sigh, admitted to the affair. Jane told him, "We will inform you about your punishment later. But don't expect a promotion, rather, prepare for a demotion." In a panic, Nick pleaded, "Jane, Senior. Please, not a demotion. I will have medical expenses. Look at my legs." But Jane remained unyielding. "The fact that you used the company car for an affair and that your legs are broken are unrelated." At that moment, the police returned to the room. "Sorry for the delay. We were conducting an investigation." And it's true that Nick was pushed onto the road and has a broken leg. The police explained. Nick, who had been crying just moments before, suddenly perked up. See? It's true that my wife pushed me. Look, Heather. You better tell the truth now. Lying will only make it worse, he said, pointing at me and laughing. The police, looking puzzled at Nick, said, I never said your wife pushed you. We've identified the perpetrator from the surveillance camera footage. Suddenly, my mother-in-law began to fidget conspicuously. Well, there's no need to check the camera footage. When my own son says Heather pushed him, that's the best evidence, isn't it? She said, laughing exaggeratedly to the police. The police responded seriously to my mother-in-law. Ma'am, don't play dumb. We have video evidence that it was you who pushed your son. It appears he was hit by a motorcycle immediately after being pushed. So he wouldn't have had a chance to see who it was. We need to confirm this with your son too. Realizing she could no longer escape, my mother-in-law defiantly admitted, yes, I pushed my son. So what? Unable to contain my anger, I coldly accused her. How could you cause an accident to your own child and then blame me? That's truly despicable. My mother-in-law, unfazed, replied. Because I didn't want to get caught. I sent you far away on purpose. So there would be no contradiction about you being home at the time of the accident, right? Jane and I were speechless. Nick, seeing his mother's attitude and realizing she nearly got him killed, appeared utterly shocked and began to unravel. Hey, Mom. What the heck are you talking about? Why can't you say that you didn't do it, that it's a lie? Why not? Explain yourself. Nick screamed, looking like he might strike her at any moment, prompting the police to hurriedly intervene. Despite being restrained, Nick continued unabated, Heather. I apologize for the affair. You don't have to do the housework or take care of my mother anymore. From now on, let this damn old woman do everything since she caused the accident. His mother, visibly frightened, shook her head. Seeing this, Nick grew even more agitated. What? Old hag. You can't say you can't do it. Before Heather came, you gave me an allowance and did all the housework, didn't you? Anyway, I can't work with this body. So you'd better work even if you have to crawl, he yelled. I was shocked, but his mother revealed. This is Nick's true nature. I've been verbally abused by Nick daily while taking care of him. I thought I was finally freed from this life when you came. She spoke tearfully. Even though she said that, I couldn't feel much sympathy for her, but I did feel a bit sorry. I had no intention of helping her or continuing to live in the family home. Seeing her son restrained by the police, she coldly remarked, Nick has treated me horribly for so long. He was always harsh to me and treated me like a slave before we were married. He squandered money on gambling and yelled at me to work more. Never helping with cleaning or cooking at home, always complaining. I hoped he would change after marriage, but seeing how he treated you, Heather, I realized he hadn't changed. But if I confronted him, I didn't know what he would do. I feared that if you, Heather, got fed up and left, I'd face his relentless attacks alone, and as I've grown weaker, I started to fear him more and more. Then, before I knew it, I pushed him. His mother continued to pour out her grievances to the police, explaining in detail how violent and oppressive Nick had been. Her story seemed endless, and Jane and I left the hospital under police instruction. Eventually, she was arrested for attempted murder. There were various circumstances, including the fact that her son and husband had treated her terribly, but her clear intent to kill Nick led to her arrest. Even as she was being arrested by the police, she didn't resist and actually expressed relief, saying, "If being away from Nick means going to jail, I'm happy to go. Finally, I'm freed from this painful life." As for me, life had also been mostly difficult at home. Since Nick had cheated on me, I couldn't continue living with him, and with his mother gone, I no longer needed to stay in the family home. I packed my things and left swiftly before Nick was discharged from the hospital. Although he was a victim and avoided arrest, he was demoted for duplicating the company car key and having an affair with a junior colleague. Moreover, he was dismissed for repeatedly using company funds to cover expenses for his affair dates. He received no severance pay and was even asked to compensate the company for the damages he caused. Nick complained to the end, "Wait. I've been working hard since I was a new graduate, and they give me nothing. What a toxic company. I'd rather leave such a company." Apparently, he had no awareness that his actions were criminal. Nick had intended to marry his affair partner, but Amy, unwilling to care for a man with broken legs and without a job, fled, leaving him alone. I divorced Nick and made sure to demand alimony from both him and Amy. I kept his contact until the alimony was fully paid, but after everything was settled, I blocked him when he started sending daily emails saying, "I'm sorry. I truly want to reflect and start over." I then settled into a new home, explained my situation, and returned to my former workplace. Although I had resigned once before, everyone welcomed me back warmly. With no children, I decided to focus on my career and build it diligently, living each day with integrity. It's embarrassing that our eldest only finished high school, while the younger one achieved so much. The voice that demeaned me belonged to my mother at our family home. My father nodded along, and my brother, caught in the middle, beamed proudly knowing he was being praised. My brother went to a prestigious university, while I started working after graduating high school. My parents always praised my brother, calling him an elite who had made efforts. Why did such a gap form between us? I am Nicole, a 26-year-old web designer, born in a somewhat rural town. I lived with my grandparents, parents, and younger brother, Sean. Sean was the long-awaited boy, born 7 years after me, and naturally, our parents adored him. They always prioritized his needs and whims over mine, often leaving me feeling neglected. Moreover, our parents never treated us equally. For Sean's birthday, they'd give him big toys as gifts, but since my birthday was close to Christmas, I'd get just one gift combined for both occasions. Usually something educational like study tools. When Sean started playing soccer as a club activity, our parents attended every practice and game to support him. I was in the tennis club during middle school, but even at my final match before retiring, neither parent came because they had to drive Sean around. There were days I felt like crying, but Sean comforted me. He even said to our parents, "That's not true. Nicole is smarter and she even teaches me. She is really amazing." And a few days after my last match, he made me a small bouquet from flowers he picked in the park, showing his gentle nature. Our grandparents also found our parents' favoritism excessive. and often reprimanded them, but by the time I graduated high school, both had passed away one after the other. Sean always stood up for me, but especially our mother didn't find it amusing. She grew strict with him, threatening, "If you keep siding with your sister, I'll make you stand outside." Especially as winter began and snow started falling. I didn't want my much younger brother to suffer, so all I could say was, "You don't have to worry about me anymore." Eventually, Sean stopped defending me, and under our parents' protection, he enjoyed his days filled with sports and studies. After our grandparents' consecutive funerals, my parents simply refused to let me go to university due to a lack of savings. I had wanted to study design, but that was not allowed, and I had to find a job immediately after high school. However, as a final act of defiance, I left our hometown for an office job at a design firm that handled websites for beauty salons and nail shops. Although it was a small company, I couldn't give up on my dream, and managed to get a position as a designer's assistant. While doing office work, I observed the professional designers daily. The harsh reality was difficult, but it only motivated me more to become a web designer myself. My alone time for study became precious. I minimized visits home because whenever I did, my parents would mock me. So I stayed away and spent weekends studying design and enhancing my software skills through online courses. This effort was recognized at work, and one day, I was integrated into the design team. My dedication was well known among the designers, who introduced me to useful materials and connections. By the third year, I had grown enough to be trusted with jobs as a web designer. 8 years after high school, as I became accustomed to my job as a web designer, news of Sean's college entrance exams arrived. He aimed for a famous private university in the city, aspiring to enter its medical school. Thanks to his diligent studies, his success was almost guaranteed. Recalling our childhood, I wanted to support him if possible and told him so. A few months later, Sean passed and got into the famous medical university. I congratulated him warmly. "Sean, I'm truly happy for you. I heard how hard you worked, attending tutorials daily." Sean thanked me modestly, but then I received a particular request. Actually, the private medical school requires a donation. It's optional, but Dad and Mom say we'd be looked down upon if we didn't contribute because we're from the countryside. It's better to pay, right? But you know our family's just scraping by with my tuition and living expenses for college. Sean said he would earn some of his living expenses through part-time jobs, but I knew the immense study load waiting for him in medical school would make that difficult. I wanted to contribute, but with our father being a regular employee and our mother working only twice a week, it was a stretch. The tuition for a private medical university was hard enough. They probably counted on using my savings, which they should have just stated outright. Despite deepening my disdain for our parents, I readily agreed to his request and helped with the donation and related expenses for his entrance. Thus, Sean moved to an apartment close to his university, and his new life began. The place where Sean lived wasn't far from my house, so he could rely on me anytime. Maybe he was enjoying his university life too much, as his replies to me were always curt. Yet he would contact me asking for things like, "I want to eat this," or "I need this, please send it." So I found myself sending parcels or lending money, doing financial favors our parents couldn't. We occasionally went out to eat as siblings, but even then, Sean was unresponsive, ignoring me and fiddling with his smartphone, except during meals. Whatever I asked, the only response was "I'm busy with my studies." His indifferent reactions left me increasingly perplexed. At some point, he began to treat me coldly. Even today's dinner felt like I was forcing him to join me. To lighten the mood, I brought up our home in a deliberately cheerful tone. "Well, I guess Mom and Dad are just happy seeing you doing well." Suddenly, Sean looked at me sharply and distorted his face as if to scoff through his nose. "Of course. I'm at a famous medical university. And you are just a high school grad designer, right? They aren't worried about you at all. You have a job that doesn't even need qualifications." His harsh words made me feel the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean by no qualifications?" "Just what it sounds like, a web designer, right? Nowadays, anyone can do that with a little search on the internet. Some of my classmates can even create websites. Aren't you embarrassed by such a job? Maybe you should study a bit and get some qualifications. Though that might be tough with just a high school brain." "Sean, what's gotten into you?" "I study seriously for my job. Don't mock me without knowing anything." Sean glared at me irritably and grimaced. "Dad and Mom say it every day on the phone. They say it's great how the eldest son got into medical school. But it's embarrassing that their older daughter only finished high school. I'm contacting you and going out to eat with you because they asked me to. Just so the embarrassing sister won't feel too inferior. The future renowned doctor has to take care of you, they say." My parents have always compared me to Sean. He was smart and kind. A reliable brother, but they would directly say to me, "Nicole, you're stupid and slow, and you're not thoughtful." Those memories flash back, making it difficult for me to breathe. Dizziness struck me from the shock, and I lowered my head to endure it. Yet, thinking I was crying, Sean just chuckled lightly and said, "I'm leaving now," then stood up and left. Having gained the freedom of college life, Sean had changed completely. Surrounded by geniuses that he never had back home probably affirmed the praise he received from our parents. Daily hearing from them that Sean is a real genius. And he will definitely become a great doctor, it's no wonder he believed it all. They included plenty of derogatory remarks about me in those praises, which influenced Sean too. Around Christmas, as usual, I went back home for a visit. I was told to bring Sean, who still maintained his attitude of ignoring me. This was his first visit back since he started studying and practicing intensely. Perhaps that's why, as soon as we arrived, my parents clung to him and ignored me. Home was ready with luxurious dishes waiting for Sean, and at night, a big party was held with neighbors, relatives, and Sean's former classmates who remained in the area. Caught up in the atmosphere, Sean began loudly bragging to everyone around. "Mom keeps saying to come back home. But I'm studying at that famous private university, what's more, in the medical faculty. It's understandable I can't come back often. Plus, studying at the medical faculty isn't something I can do alone. We need to work in teams, so if I'm the only one to return home, it puts everyone else in a tough spot. Everyone comes to me with their questions, so give me a break." I was in the kitchen, pretending to prepare dishes. But I could hear Sean's loud brags clearly. Though our parents and relatives, who had always lavishly praised Sean, might ignore it. The neighbors and former classmates probably didn't appreciate his boastful talk. Perhaps tired of his grandstanding? A man in my neighborhood brought up a conversation, maybe thinking to do me a favor. "By the way, Nicole is also working hard, isn't she? In design, I believe." But Sean and our parents unanimously and flatly denied it. No way, Nicole is hopeless. She seems to be trying, but… That's right, our eldest is just a high school grad, which is quite embarrassing. There's a big gap between her and Sean. In a room filled with former classmates and neighbors with high school diplomas. It's surprising how Nicole can still come home. Laughing loudly, Sean continued as both our parents chuckled. I was just frozen, feeling a rush of anger rising the next moment. Good for you, Nicole. From next year, you won't have to show your face here anymore. Understood. I managed to say, my voice trembling. Despite the apologetic faces of the onlookers. If you say so, I'll take you up on that. I'm never coming back here again. The anger inside me bubbled like magma, but the words that came out were utterly cold. Don't ever show your face here again. On the way to the station, I nearly screamed, holding back the overwhelming emotions. My parents had, at least to some extent, worked and raised 2 children. If I valued my career, I couldn't maintain such relationships. Several months after my decision, just as the new academic year was about to begin. Hey, what's happening with my tuition fees? Sean's voice was tentative, tinged with panic. I responded calmly. I supported last year's. The entrance fee, donation, and first year's tuition, remember? That's not it. I mean for the second year. This year's fees, they're urging me from the university to pay soon. What's going on? What do you mean, what's going on? I never said I'd pay. I could tell Sean was speechless on the other end. Actually, I was only supposed to pay for the donation, right? That can't be. But you know, my living expenses. My ability to save significantly stemmed from switching to a major design firm. Having informed my family about my job change. Days later, I also refused further contact with my parents. Sean's calls became daily, filled with whining. If there had been a sincere apology. Among the messages, there were astonishing ones. People who look down on others shouldn't become doctors. With this, I cut off all contact with my family and welcomed a new season. I had been supporting not only my brother's tuition but also sending money home. Although my brother was talented, he had squandered any substantial money. One day, perhaps stressed, my father caused an incident. On the bus during his commute. My mother tried to work, but with only limited part-time experience. My parents attempted to contact me through relatives. But the content they wanted mediated was invariably demanding and authoritative in tone. The relatives recognized that the problem lay with my parents. And gradually they asked me not to worry about it. And ceased communicating on their behalf. This led to a thinning of ties with my family, allowing me to return to a peaceful life. According to the relatives, bad rumors were circulating about my brother, who had become a recluse, and my unemployed father, whose unsavory appearance further alienated them. Unable to bear the situation, my mother eventually disappeared from view and now, I'm told, is uncontactable. Left behind, they survive meagerly on welfare, without any income. Warm interactions with neighbors might have offered some solace. But given their behavior, it's unlikely they receive much sympathy from those around them. As for me, my career in design is progressing well. I have secured participation in significant projects that will prominently feature my name. Using this as a stepping stone, I've launched a long-held plan, that is, preparing for university entrance exams. As funds accumulate smoothly and my current work stabilizes, I plan to begin this new challenge. I'm also considering setting up my own business. Wanting to learn not only about design but also about management. I'm excited about these new ventures. I won't be able to attend your 60th birthday celebration because I'm on a business trip. Then I don't consider you family. Don't bother coming back. You're getting a divorce. My mother-in-law decides such things on her own. Well then, I'll do just as she wishes. I decided not to come back. Then, my mother-in-law kept calling me desperately. Please, come back home right now. My name is Tracy, I'm a 30-year-old office worker. My husband Joey and I have been married for 3 years. It's been that long, but honestly, I didn't think our marriage would last this long. I met my husband through work, as he frequently visited my company for business. His earnestness in sales was truly impressive. I admired his sincerity towards his work, and every time I saw him, he would greet me properly, which made me think he was a nice person. One day, I happened to go to a bar with a coworker and ran into him. We ended up drinking together and exchanged contact information, which led to meals and outings. After dating for about a year, he proposed, and we decided to get married. It was an unexpected progression that brought us closer and led us to marriage, which felt like fate. At our wedding, many colleagues and friends from both our workplaces attended, making it a memorable and wonderful ceremony. The early days of married life were truly enjoyable. However, concerns started to arise, particularly involving my mother-in-law. I had felt this way since we greeted her for our marriage, as she seemed overly attentive to my husband. Joey is really excellent. He was good at studies during his student days and is very competent at work now. He's truly a son to be proud of. Mom, that's embarrassing. I'm just stating the truth. You'd better quietly accept that you're amazing. My mother-in-law would always praise him excessively and talk about him endlessly when he was around. Speaking of which, Joey was good at sprinting in elementary school, always finishing first. Not just studies, but he was also talented in sports. He was a real genius. If it were just doting parental praise, it wouldn't be a problem. But her excessive love for her son made her quite harsh towards me. Tracy, you're preparing nutritious meals for Joey, right? Take photos of your daily meals and send them to me. I was bewildered when she first mentioned this right after we got married. However, after repeated requests, I reluctantly sent her the photos. Then, my mother-in-law would constantly criticize the meals I prepared. Not enough vegetables. The amount of meat is insufficient. It looks bad. The menu lacks variety. She would freely complain like that. But I'm also working and busy with my job, so I can't focus that much on meals. Joey says they're delicious and finishes his meals every day, and he has never complained. However, being constantly criticized by my mother-in-law made me feel insecure, leading me to try making more elaborate dishes even when tired from work. But this was physically very taxing. My husband can't cook, and since my mother-in-law demands that I send photos daily, even if my husband were to cook, she'd mistakenly think I made it and criticize me harshly. So I must prepare dinner no matter what. If work were less demanding, it might be possible, but it's tough when I'm busy and need to work overtime. And relentlessly, my mother-in-law calls to complain. Hey, you're late sending today's dinner photo. Sorry, I just got home. What? Just got home? What are you talking about? How can you let Joey wait hungry until this late? Unbelievable. What have you been doing? I was at work, overtime. Don't lie. You must have been out having fun. No. I'm an office worker, you know. Even if you say that, you're not given any significant work, are you? My mother-in-law completely underestimates me. It's probably because of my educational background. I graduated from college, but not a very prestigious one. Therefore, my mother-in-law looks down on me incredibly. A woman from such a third-rate college married my Joey. I really hate it. Thinking back, she said such things even during our marriage introduction. Meeting her for the first time and hearing her say such things made me think she was an unreasonable person. And looking back, Joey just gave a wry smile at the time and did not defend me. Perhaps he thinks the same as his mother. Such thoughts made me feel uneasy, and as we continued our marriage, I realized he was a mama's boy. Well, being doted on and pampered by his mother, it's natural that he treasures her unusually. He often wanted to return to his parents' house. Initially, he made time for us to go out together, but gradually, he became less considerate and more eager to visit his mother. I let my husband go back alone because I didn't want to visit. Every time he would pout and ask, "Tracy, why aren't you coming?" But I tried not to let it bother me. During Easter and Christmas, I couldn't refuse, so I had to go to my in-laws, and each time it was unpleasant. "Tracy, you really are terrible at cooking. The food in the photos you send is so bad, and I feel sorry for Joey every day. When I actually saw you cook, your skills were shockingly poor. You're failing as a woman." While I cooked, my mother-in-law would berate me. It's impossible to cook with her in the way. She doesn't even tell me where anything is, so of course, the flow gets disrupted. Yet, she still finds it right to berate me. She really has a nasty character. She sees me as a great enemy, probably thinking I've stolen her only son. I was thoroughly fed up with Joey's mama's boy tendencies and my mother-in-law's harassment. I thought several times that I would get a divorce this year. Work was tough, and I worried about regretting the decision to divorce after all the effort to marry, so I ended up maintaining the status quo. Before I knew it, 3 years of marriage had passed. On top of the usual harassment, my mother-in-law started nagging me about having children. "It's been 3 years since you got married, and you haven't shown me a single grandchild's face. You're useless, coming from a third-rate university. Everything about you is third-rate, including homemaking and work. The only contribution you can make is having children. Why do I have to be subjected to such comments?" I was beyond angry, and I was appalled. People who are truly happy do not choose to continue belittling others. If you are truly content, you naturally wouldn't bother much about others in a good way. My mother-in-law harasses me so persistently that she must not be walking a happy path in life. Although her harassment troubled me, just thinking this way somewhat lightened my heart. However, my mother-in-law started doing something even more bothersome. She began visiting our house frequently. Previously, it was Joey who often went to visit his parents, so my mother-in-law rarely came to our house. But lately, she started coming over, claiming it was because Joey was too busy. When I come home late from overtime, I find her belongings at the entrance. My mother-in-law and Joey would often enjoy a meal in the living room. "Hi, Tracy, you're back. I was just having a lovely time with Joey." "Too bad." "Hi, you were here?" "Yes, I came to see Joey." "There's nothing prepared for you, so make something for yourself." She said this with a triumphant look as she ate. In fact, I didn't want to eat her cooking anyway. I was tired from work and took an aggressive stance. "Did you use the groceries without asking? It's common sense to at least contact me." When I said this, my mother-in-law's face turned red with anger. "What? Why should I have to say such things to you? Living off Joey's support, and yet you have the nerve. Living off his support?" I asked this while looking at my husband, who awkwardly averted his gaze. Whether my mother-in-law is mistaken or Joey has lied, I don't know, but the reality is that I am the one supporting our household finances. I am currently a manager at my company. The company itself is doing well lately, so my salary is quite substantial. On the other hand, despite his high academic credentials, Joey is unable to climb the corporate ladder due to the surplus of elites at his company. He is constantly overtaken by his younger colleagues, and has now been a sidetracked employee. His salary has been decreasing yearly, and it is now about half of mine. So, practically, I am the one sustaining our household. Unaware of this, my mother-in-law continues to berate me. That's right. You're in the position of asking him to marry you. How can you be so insolent? You're truly hopeless. Can't do housework, can't work properly, and can't have children. It's just a series of can'ts. Who knows when Joey might leave you? I looked at Joey, who continued to look uncomfortable. Then, he said weakly, "Mom, don't say things like I'm leaving her." Oh, Joey is always so kind. But if I don't be strict, this woman will get carried away. I won't allow that. I was at my wit's end with my mother-in-law. I never thought she could be this persistent. Amidst this, another troublesome situation arose. It happened while I was away on a business trip. My smartphone kept ringing so much during work that I wondered what it could be. I took a moment to go to the bathroom to check it, and saw that my mother-in-law had been calling non-stop. I wondered if something had happened. Even so, feeling it was probably nothing important, I decided to turn off the phone and focus on my work. After finishing, when I turned on my phone, there were even more calls from my mother-in-law. Thinking it might be something serious, I called her back. She answered the phone instantly. "You're late. Answer the phone immediately, you fool." As soon as I answered, she started shouting. Thinking it would hurt my ears, I quickly switched to speakerphone. "What do you want from me?" "We're having my 60th birthday celebration tomorrow, and you must attend." "What? Your 60th birthday?" I regretted calling back. "Yes, I've invited relatives, so you must come. You'll be preparing the food, and I'm leaving all the party preparations to you." "That's impossible." "Huh? What are you saying?" "You don't have the right to refuse. I'm on a business trip right now." "What business trip?" "You're probably just on vacation. Hurry back." "Stop it. I'm working and it's impossible for me. I can't attend your 60th birthday celebration because I'm on a business trip." I firmly refused. It seemed my mother-in-law was quite angry, and she raised her voice again. "Then I don't consider you family. Stay on your business trips forever. Don't bother coming back. You're getting a divorce." My mother-in-law decided such things on her own. But I had reached my limit. I would do just as she wished. I decided not to return. I ignored all the incoming calls from Joey. Then, my mother-in-law started bombarding me with calls, but I ignored all of them too. I went back to my parents' house and commuted to work from there. Before I knew it, a month had passed. Then, my mother-in-law started calling again. Reluctantly, I answered. She pleaded with me in a voice I had never heard before. "Please, come back right now. If things continue this way, Joey will be." My mother-in-law was in a panic, understandably, since Joey's salary alone couldn't cover the rent for their house. And since he doesn't do any household chores, she must have been coming over to clean and do laundry. However, being unable to pay the rent and potentially getting evicted would be quite troublesome. Being unable to pay rent is essentially the same as being in debt. My mother-in-law was desperate, but it had nothing to do with me. The signal seems bad. I pretended I couldn't hear her. In any case, I will be divorcing Joey. Goodbye. What? Hold on. I hung up the phone and blocked my mother-in-law's number. Then I hired a lawyer and demanded a divorce from my husband. I was prepared to take it to court if necessary, and he quickly agreed to the divorce. Thus, I was able to divorce Joey successfully. Moreover, I was able to demand some alimony from my husband. He returned to his parents' house after the divorce, but he seems to be feeling very awkward as he had lied to his mother all this time. He also made a mistake at work and faced a pay cut. My former mother-in-law was shocked to learn that her son had become so unreliable at his company, and she was so distraught that she became bedridden. Along with this news, Joey sent numerous emails asking for help. They truly are a hopeless pair. Cutting ties was definitely the right decision. Meanwhile, I moved into a single apartment near my workplace and have been able to focus more on my job. I'm not interested in love for now, and I plan to continue delivering results at work and aim higher.